kind of express why we're doing what we do in our business and why we're working so hard and what our why is. And that third party, you really kind of tell them, hey, listen, this is what they're trying to accomplish and they need your help. And here's ways that you can contribute to this thing that you're so excited about being a part of. Because sometimes it's hard for us when we ask our partners to do something, it feels like we're telling them to do something, but you really kind of help them understand why it's important and why.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Mortgage Influencers, where we bring you professionals who share insight into the latest trends, tips, industry technology, and services to help you be a mortgage influencer in your mortgage business. Okay, I think we are live now. So happy Wednesday. Welcome to our next episode of Mortgage Influencers. My name's Ginger Bell, and I have with me my co-hosts, my partners in crime, if you will, Mr. Steve Richmond, who is just had a great story to share. I'll have you share it a little bit. And then Scott Schang. And we have a special guest today. So hello, boys. And I'm excited to introduce Irene Duford. And Irene has so many great things that she does for our industry. And also a birthday, which I think was Monday. Is that right, Irene?
Yeah, it was Monday.
Okay. So a happy belated birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. I haven't even had a chance to get on Facebook and thank everybody for all the nice wishes. So
it's one of those things that, a lot of people, it's your birthday happens. And I was on a cruise last year for my birthday and my phone was just blowing up through random, getting service and not getting service. So, So, okay. I want to get into, and then Steve, I want to get back to what you and I were talking about as far as missed opportunities or something like that a little bit. But before we do that, I do want Irene for you to share a little bit about yourself and some of the things that you do for our industry, because I know when I think of really training, and especially team training and systems and enhancing and growing, I think of you. And so I think a lot of people probably may not even know you, because I think you're one of the best kept secrets in our industry. So
thanks.
So
not anymore. Here
not
anymore. So I was a loan originator 20 years. And a few years ago, it seems like just a couple years ago, but it's been about 4 or 5 years now, I stopped originating because about 4 years ago, I opened a training company, and we specifically, as a Freedom Club coach, so I coach with the Freedom Club. Carl, Tammy and I started the Freedom Club 11 and a half years ago now. And I was the first coach, and it was really fun to do. And as I was coaching people, loan officers, I noticed that there was a piece missing for their teams. So they were getting trained, they were doing marketing, we were training them how to get more business, but the team wasn't really up to speed with what they were learning. And so I noticed as I was talking to people that there was a real need for this. So I went to Carl with the idea, and he said, that's a great idea. Why don't you do it? And I said, okay. So I opened, and I started with the first class called WOW Training. And the reason I called it that, it's called the Loan Partner WOW Training Class. And it's because we started for the teams, the loan partners specifically, so that they could be on board with how to wow clients, how to give great customer service. It's not a class for teaching them how to do loans. Mm-hmm. It's like FHA, VA, that type of thing. It's more of a communication, how to deliver a wow experience and get people to want to come back to you. Because of the way you talk to people, we teach them words to use, words not to use, phrases, scripting to use, how to deliver such an amazing experience that people will say, wow. And part of that is in the follow-up. It's in knowing how to turn in a clean file, how to get documentation, how to ask for it, how to be ahead of things and treat people in a way that they just have an amazing experience. And so was our first class. And we did it for loan partners, loan assistants. But as time went on, we noticed that people said, can I send my marketing assistant? Can I send my caller? Can I send my processor? And we said, yeah, sure. As long as they communicate with the public, they're talking to clients and realtors and things. So that's worked out really well. We've, Scott, your group, right, sent a couple people through our class, and it's just worked out really well.
People.
Yeah, all of them. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. You're a VIP with us for sure. So, and if they send repeat clients, we're really excited because that means that they really got some good stuff out of the class. So that was the main reason, is helping them. It's kind of when your parents tell you to do something and then you don't really do it, and then your friends tell you to do it, and then all of a sudden they do it. It's kind of like that with loan officers, where loan officers
was a great idea.
Yeah, exactly. They try to get it across, but loan officers are so busy, they don't have time to be training people or to think about all those details that get missed otherwise. So,
well, I mean, if you look at the big secret of what we all do, the third party expert always seems to carry a little bit more weight. I can't tell you how many times we all go into companies are like, if I have to say this one more time, but if you say it, then they'll finally believe us, right? When it comes from that third party, it just is more significant.
You're never a prophet in your own village.
Yeah, that's the truth.
I think it's 50 miles is the rule.
I think it's a 50-mile rule. Yeah. Well, and the other thing, like what Irene does, which is just brilliant about the way that you approached it, is it's also hard for us to kind of express why we're doing what we do in our business and why we're working so hard and what our why is. And that third party, you really kind of tell them, hey, listen, this is what they're trying to accomplish and they need your help. And here's ways that you can contribute to this thing that you're so excited about being a part of. Because sometimes it's hard for us when we ask our partners to do something, it feels like we're telling them to do something, but you really kind of help them understand why it's important and why what we're trying to do is so important and what your role is there. So you're not just doing what the boss says. The boss really needs you as part of their team, because together you're all creating this experience, a repeatable customer experience. So on so many levels, it's just brilliant the way that you put it together. And I think it speaks volumes to kind of your heart and your character, that's where you went with this and how you built it. So
thank you, Scott.
Yeah, I really thought that it was special.
Thank you.
I think it's an area too, because you have opened up an opportunity to have really what I see as that critical staff that once the loan originator hands it off, then in all essence, they should be going on to the next deal, right?
Yes.
And so the love that happens, that, relationship that happens is really right there in the core. And I think sometimes people forget that having that to where, first of all, they know what to say. And, you think we talk about videos all the time, right? Having an idea as far as what to say on video, whether you're outlining it or using a script, that's important. Mm-hmm. And so, things to think about. Being an influencer is not just about you. And our group is about influencers, and we talk about social media and other things, but yet so much of what happens once that transaction comes in is with those core people.
Yes.
So giving them
and allowing that team to take ownership, empowerment, exactly. Allowing that team to take ownership of their role and know that they're playing a role in this is so important.
Yes.
Well, I want to hear from Irene, but what I just keep hearing over and over again is she's figured out how to go from customer service to customer experience. It's not service, it's experience. And that's the walk and talk and definition of the evolution of what's going on.
Yeah. That's your talk, Irene. That's the talk that you're going to give. That's
right.
Right?
Yes.
That's the whole thing, is being able to do that. And so, part of that and taking that experience. So let's kind of unpack that a little bit, because again, as influencers, we always think, hey, it's me, it's about me, I'm out there. What if you put those people and had them involved in creating some of the videos and involved in maybe even doing podcasts or something like that? What would
Yes.
that look like as far as empowerment, right?
Yes. I just interviewed one of the people that went through the WOW training from a loan officer. We became good friends. He asked me to coach her as a loan partner separately. So I did. And we became very good friends. And she helped institute some of the new classes that we've come out with. She's helped like review them and make sure that they were good, like our boot camp that we'll talk about in a minute. But what I talked to her about was on the podcast. I interviewed her. I said, you have to be on the podcast because you're so great. She's a loan processor manager, and she was managing the loan partners at the time when she came on board with a loan officer. And then she took the class and was blown away. And then she just, what's so great about that is that from her point of view, loan officers are listening to the podcast that she did with me, and they're hearing it from the loan processor manager's point of view, like the ops. Her official title is operations manager, but she manages all the processors and all of that. And so she was so blown away by the training that now everyone has gone through the training there at Schang's at his business. And it's been amazing what has happened because they've gone through the training. And the thing is that, like you said, influence, the only reason that we're called mortgage influencers is because we're influencing people for good.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. It's not about us being mortgage influencers and being this great person or whatever. It's about being able to influence people for good. And that's what you do so well, Ginger and Scott, and all of you do that so well, Steve, just being able to influence people for good. And if we teach them the proper way, then they can influence people for good as well, our team. Because think about it, the loan officer probably talks to the clients. If they're a high-end loan officer and they're trying to go get more business, they talk to the clients less than the team does.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And, but they're not
Honestly.
training the team how to talk to the clients.
Yeah.
So
important. Okay. So you mentioned your podcast. So if you can share, and I'll type it into the chat and I'll make sure and put it into Facebook too. How do we find you? What is your web address for your podcast? And I'll get your business in a minute.
okay, the web address for the podcast is Loan Officer Team Training.
Loan Officer Team Training. And so, we started getting into, conversations of podcasts. I actually just am in the process of finishing a podcast guide and a planner and some things around podcasts, but having that name is critical. So if you're listening to this or you're watching this and you're thinking about doing a podcast, what Irene has done in giving a website is so important, because so many times it's like, oh, go to my podcast. Well, maybe I listen on Spotify, and Scott listens on Apple, and Steve listens on YouTube. It's like there's so many different options. By having that URL, and it's relative to the name, Loan Officer Team Training, perfect. So I love that. Okay, so tell me about who do you interview? What's your focus? Who's your audience?
Okay, so our audience is loan officers. That's who we want to give them tips and things that they can use in their business. And so I interview all kinds of people. I've had you on the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, Ginger did a great podcast, and I interview people who have something to say to loan officers, something of value to give to loan officers. And I've actually, my bucket list interview was Shad Helmstetter, Dr. Shad Helmstetter, who wrote What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. And I was able to do a bucket list item with him on the podcast. That was great.
Nice.
And so we interview loan officers. I have in mind to interview a lot of the people that have put their people through the training and find out how it helped them, and just things that we can do to help loan officers, give them value.
Yeah, so that's important. And the same thing, for what you do, who your audience is as far as your business, right?
Mhm.
So having her podcast wouldn't make sense to have her podcast be for realtors or for consumers, right? Her
Right.
audience is loan officers. And
Mhm.
so that's the who. I always call it the 3 W's. So you always want to have the 3 W's. Who is your audience? What are you going to talk about? So what are they going to, learn by watching? And you just
Mhm.
said that they're going to learn about tips, things to help them in their business, things to help them grow their business, things to help them with their team. And I love the fact that you're having those team players on, because that's who they need to hear from. That's
Yes.
absolutely perfect. And then the
What I
third
love
W
about
is
that,
why.
and I know, I'm sorry, hit your third W, and then
Well, why? You answer the why.
why are you listening to me? What's in it for you?
Exactly.
I mean, the WIIFM, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
what it
right.
is. But what I love when you say we have other people on the team that's in there in today's world, and Scott's going to kick me under the table when I say this and smack me around later about artificial AI, and it's all computers now, and it's all artificial AI. The fact that you're including those other team members through this, and the consumer gets to see who that is and understand that that's a real person on the other end, that's how you start driving that relationship. And I just think that's critical, and that's great for you. Kudos.
And
thank you.
for the record, I'm patting you on the back for that comment. I would never kick you under the table, because you're 100% right. AI is not going to replace somebody caring about the customer journey. It's going to create some efficiencies, and it's going to help you save time on some things. But no, it's all about the people. It's always going to be about the people. And the more things get automated, the more people crave human connection.
Yes.
And I think that's the single most important thing we should always be talking about.
I agree.
Well,
Yeah.
and the customer experience. I mean, you're not talking about the customer process. You're not talking about, hey, getting them through the pipeline. You're talking about the customer experience.
Yes.
And that's the thing. That's what brings people back time and time again. We had Brittany Hodak on, and she, talks about that all the time, is creating that wow experience, creating, super fans. That's how you create super fans, is by
Yes.
giving them an amazing experience. And I don't know what the numbers are. We can make something up, whatever. It's like, we'll Madsen some numbers, Scott, where it's like statistically saying, I have a friend that used to do that. But I mean, people will come back and they will pay more based on that experience, and they'll also
Yes.
refer. So
Yeah.
they're so important to be able to bring that in there. And I love the fact of being able to empower them. And I also think about ways you can involve them. Back when I first started doing video, I was working in wholesale, and we honestly, and I don't even know what we used to record it. It was probably one of those really rinky dink little tiny, I don't even know what they're called, the little tiny video cameras that you had, Scott, you probably
Yes.
there.
Oh, yeah.
GoPro?
No, it wasn't a
No,
GoPro.
they
It
were
was
like
way
the
before
flips.
GoPro.
They're like flips
Way
or
before,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you found one that you had or something. You had something, Scott. But we had someone like running with a file in their hand down the hall saying, okay, we're running your file. You're going on to, docs, your file's going out. And it's like created that visual,
Yes.
God only knows how we got it onto the email or sent it out, but there's so many things now you can do. But even things like that, think outside the box. Think
Mhm.
of ways you can create that experience. Think of ways that you can enhance that so that people remember you. It's about being memorable.
Yes.
It's not just you being memorable, it's your entire team being memorable, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything
My
you
pet
say.
peeve.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
That's my pet peeve. I hear LOs say it all the time. I told them that they didn't remember. It is not
Mhm.
their job to remember. It
No.
is your job to be memorable.
Yes.
You know, and I want to go back to well, it's not going back, but when we talk about being an influencer, you it's being an influencer is not all about you. You are a better leader when you're promoting your team. The only reason I can get on here and create this content and do this leadership is because I'm surrounded with great people and we all share
Yes.
these values. And when you're telling people that, it's like, because if, you know, being an influencer, it's me, me, me. Well, I want you to work on my loan. Well, the only reason I can be me is because my team shares my values and talking to me. I think David Zai, on his video, he says, when you talk to my team, you're talking to me because we share the
Yes.
same values. And I just love the way that he said that. And that's such a powerful statement to be able to say. And it's going to give you so much more wiggle room when something goes wiggly on your loan, because all loans do, all loans wiggle. And then you're like, you know, our team is on it, and they just trust everybody that they talk to. And it's that consistency with consistency and communication. If they're hearing and getting the same feeling from you as they are from the next person they talk to, it doesn't matter how many people are in the process if they're all saying and feel the same way. You don't want too many people in the process, obviously, but it's that seamless experience, like what Steve said. Absolutely 100%.
Yes.
Having a seamless experience. And that's why you bring your team with you.
And that's why we use the term sweat the same way every time. We teach
Love that.
processes and systems to have things the same way every time, so that no matter who has the loan or who's working that day or not working that day, it's done the same way every time with a process. And it's powerful when there's a process. Processes are super powerful.
It's also so much easier. There's
There's
so much fewer fires that need to be put out.
Yes. Yep,
you
there's a checklist.
And you
Yeah.
think
Talk about
about
those.
it can take a little bit to set that up. And I think that's where some people struggle. It's like, okay, I'm just going to get it done. And then you go back and get it done. And then it's like, but if you have that checklist and you have that process down, it can be very helpful.
Yes. So we go through them, we give them checklists in the class. But you know what we start the class out with as the foundation? And I do this on every class I have, even the ones that are recorded as a course that are not live, because these are live classes. The WOW training is live. We have live trainers on the class. We talk about self-talk and how important it is to say the right things to yourself. And it is powerful for people. It's so fun as the trainer to see people's eyes open up and recognize the fact that they need to change their self-talk. We all do, right? We all do. But to have them learn about self-talk and how it works, because, you know, loan officers, we're all used to going to seminars and courses and classes, and we learn all that stuff. But loan partners and loan assistants, they're not exposed to those kinds of things as much. And so they are really impacted about self-talk, about how to do it. And that's when I ask them about, because we do, feedback forms. And that's like the number one takeaway is it's helped them in their life, in their business, as a team, as a team member, as a person that gives great customer experience, but also in their home life. And so everything I do starts with that, because that's the foundation of everything, is how we talk to ourselves and the things that we allow our mindset.
So you're saying from here to here is a mighty obstacle course. I hear what you're saying. We got all kinds of stuff going on right there.
That's
It can be
training right there.
Yeah, it can be a mighty obstacle course, or it could be just as smooth as silk, depending on what we're saying to ourselves, right? Our mindset. And we're always working on it. I've been doing it for many, many years, and I still have to catch myself all the time saying things that I shouldn't be saying to myself, and then just rewording it.
Well, and right now, especially, our industry, again, it's like, it seems like we're like peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys, so much. And so having that rush where it's like busy, 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 that's a different self-talk, right?
Yes.
And going through change, like what we've done right now. And I think leaders a lot of times forget, because you get stuck in your own head and that self-talk, and how
Mhm.
important that is to have that conversation with your team and help them through that as well. And
Yes.
sometimes they don't know what that conversation is that's going on in your head. They only see it in your face.
Mhm.
And so as much as you try to hide that, they still see that. And
Yes.
so such a great reminder to do that.
And I think most of the time when we trip ourselves up, it's because our self-talk is assuming that we can control things that we can't control.
Yes.
Right. And that's what it is we get upset about things oh, I can't believe rates went up. Cool. What hand did you have in interest rates? You didn't have anything. So you can tackle that you can tackle that in a lot of different directions. There's a lot of positive perspectives. There's always a positive side to everything.
There is.
And you just need to find it, and you're going to manifest what you focus on.
That's for sure. Yeah. So that's the reason we start with mindset. And then we can take that throughout the whole course, which is it's really fun to see their eyes open up and hear things that loan officers just take for granted, because we hear stuff all the time that's really good.
Yeah. So I'm going to lead into, you and I had a conversation probably about a month ago about succession planning. And I think it is something that's very real in our industry. Probably for me, I know, and it's my age, it's like my husband talks about all the time, he's ready to retire. I say, I'm not. I'm blessed to love what I do. But I think for some individuals that they may be, it's like, okay, what is that next step? And how can I prepare? And I've been seeing several people be able to bring their family in to where, junior's taking over, which is awesome and amazing. And you've done that in your business as well, right?
Yes. Yes.
But that's a whole nother dynamic as far as getting into that I think a lot of people don't put any thought into. And so having that internal team to where it is the same mindset. Scott, you talked about that. It's like, when you're talking, David says, when you're talking to my team, you're talking to me. So how can someone do that? I mean, if they're looking at, okay, I've got a, 5-year plan, say, and this is what I need to do. What can they do to set up to where, they can do a good handoff?
Yeah. A good handoff. Are you talking about a family handoff or
Anything?
any
It
handoff?
could be a family member. It could be selling it. It could be, I think probably a big reality in our industry that, we do have a lot of people at that point where it's like they are thinking about, okay, what's the next step? And can I do that? And how can you do it to where it is very graceful and it continues with what you've built, And I think you do that in the continuum because you're bringing so much of what you're doing internally with the WOW training that I think that could honestly relate to, that next step as well.
Yes. I think people need to have a loan officer. If they're thinking about handing it off to someone else, then it needs to be systems and processes need to be put in place. A checklist and following the same way every time, doing things so that everything is set up, and especially making sure that they have a great past client database that they're reaching out to on a consistent basis. My loan partner was my oldest son for quite a few years. He was my loan partner. And it got to the point after I started coaching, I didn't even need to be doing anything with the loans, because between my husband and my oldest son was a loan partner. My husband was the one doing the marketing and talking to the agents and calling them and that type of thing. And I didn't have to do really anything anymore. I was still visible once in a while, but that handoff was really good because my son was really good about doing things the same way every time, having a system. And he actually didn't want me involved. He would rather have me not be involved because I would start something and then try to get it back in the middle of it. Like most loan officers, I'm sure everybody listening is going to relate to this. Those are my clients. That's my baby, that type of thing. And he was happy to just take it and own it. And that was really good. And if you have someone that you can rely on like that, I was able to step out and totally turn the business over to him. And he was able to take it from there because everyone knew who he was already. They knew who he was. They knew we were family too. So it's a family thing, but also whether he was family or not, he was so great at what he did that I was able to just hand it off because people were used to talking with him. So if you as a loan officer try to do everything yourself, you'll never hand off things the proper way. And it's one of what's the common curses of a loan officer is having a hard time letting go. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we tell people in the WOW training, we let them know that, this was your loan officer's baby. Your loan officer started this with no loans, and they've built it up to this point where they now have you as their team, and they need you to take ownership of it. But it's going to be a little bit of a rough go because they're going to have a hard time letting go. And, I'd say, how many of you see that your loan officer has a hard time letting go? And everybody raises their hand. So it's good for them to understand it from a different perspective, but handing it off is all about having a system in place and trust with your team. Having the right team is the goal. It's the key.
Yeah.
Total key.
Absolutely. So we're at the top of the hour, so I want to make sure that we're respectful of everyone's time. So Steve, we're not going to get to your story. We'll get to it next week.
It's all right. I'm just sitting here in total jealousy of our friend.
Oh, you're sweet.
Okay,
I want to hear your story, so I have to.
Okay, well, we'll do that. But before we do that, how can people?
I have a hard stop. So I'll see you guys next week. I can't.
And we'll
believe I'm
catch
gonna
it.
miss this
We'll
story.
catch it next week.
Yes, I'll be on
next week. So Irene, how can people get in touch with you? Bye, Scott.
Yes, so they can go to loanteamtraining.com. That's our website. It has all the information about our classes.
Perfect.
And my email is irene@loanteamtraining.com.
Perfect. Okay.
Thanks for having me on today.
Irene, thank you so much for joining. Steve, I know you're going to be glued to Facebook.
I'm going to be texting like crazy in 30 seconds. But Irene, it was a pleasure. Ginger said this is going to be our next episode. This is one of the best episodes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. It was nice to meet you. I'm glad
Awesome.
to be on here with you guys.
Okay, thanks, guys. For those of you who are watching us live, have a safe Memorial Day weekend, and we will see you next week. Bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.